again to another video on Screwsphere, and today doing something a little different, testing out something new, and that is a tier list. And what tier list are we going to be doing today? Well, we're going to be doing some Buffy villains. We're going to talk through some Buffy villains and put them in some places. As you can see here is the tier list. We've got 5 different sections. Slayerific being the absolute best villains of the series. Sunnydale, second tier. Shallow Like Us is somewhere in the middle. It's okay. It's not brilliant, but it's acceptable. Then we have Bored Now, which is not good. Watchable, but not. You know what I mean? I'm saying watchable. It's not about the episodes, but it's about the villains. But the villains are. Yeah. And then we've got Elmouth, which are the absolute worst of the worst villains the show has ever done. Not sure if I'm going to end up using that. Maybe once or twice. But we'll see. But anyway, let's get right to it with the tier list. And we're going to go season by season. Just so that I think it makes more sense to go season by season, in all fairness. So, first, of course, is The Master. Now, for me, one of the weakest seasons is season 1. Simply because I think it lacks a little something. It might just be that it had a short season, so I had to rush it out a little bit. A little bit like my YouTube channels sometimes. Some of my YouTube videos. But anyway, so I think The Master is sort of I don't think he's a bad villain. I just don't think he's the best. So I'm going to put him in Shallow Like Us. Now, if you're wondering what is Shallow Like Us, I mean, I've got to assume you know what Bored Now means. It's the Willow catchphrase that we got during season 6. But Shallow Like Us comes from a line from Xander, where he's talking about Giles having a TV. He's shallow like us, so that is why I figured, chucking something else in from the universe. Anyway, so yeah, I'm putting The Master in Shallow Like Us. We'll change the orders as well as we go along, in how bad they are in comparison to the rest, or how good they are in comparison to the rest. So next up, putting a duo in here. Putting these two as one villain, but they are technically speaking, they're 2 villains. And that is Spike and Drusilla. Now, you could argue that because Spike later becomes an ally, that is it fair to put him as a villain? Yes, it is, because this is going season by season. So as I say, season 1 had The Master, and that's about it. Season 2 had a few more. But for me, Drew and Spike, when they were introduced as villains, I am a big fan of Spike. Spike's one of my favourite characters in the whole series. And there's no way that he's in the same league as The Master, in the sense of being not alright. Is he Slayerific? Is he top tier villain? This is a tough one. This is something I'm doing it live as is. So, bear with me if I make decisions, might change them later on. But as villains, I'm going to put them in top tier. I do think they deserve to be there. Simply put, Drusilla's cuckoo and Spike's a bit mad. To a certain extent, but he's mad in the villain way. But I think James Masters, like later on, obviously, he becomes a good guy. He becomes an ally to Buffy. He becomes an ally to Angel in season 5. But I think it's important to remember that where Spike started was as a villain. He was the bad guy. Little bit of a bad guy of the week when they initially introduced him. They only planned to have him in like 3 episodes. And they brought him back, bringing him back until eventually we got in back in Angel. So, brilliant characters overall, and I think they bring a lot to the show, especially with the development of Spike. Drusilla got more development in Angel than she did in Buffy. But it's I say that there is a lot of development for Drusilla in this show. You know, you get the whole thing where she's nutty. They do a ritual, and she's no longer nutty, but there's still a bit of nut in there. You know, you can take the nuts out, but the nuts there still. Sort of thing. So yeah, Drusilla and Spike are happy to put them in the top tier. So next up, season 2 villain, a villain that I personally, you know, the storyline and how they made him a villain from a good guy is like really good. It's definitely worth, you know, watching it for this villain at times, and that's the season 2 version that we get of Angelus. Angelus is absolutely top tier villain. There's no way I'm not putting him in the top tier. He's terrible. He's slayerific. He's horrific. You know, some of the things. I mean, in Angel, he's brutal. But when it comes to small, I almost said small. Then. When it comes to Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Sunnydale, Angelus is just too brutal not to put him anywhere near the top. Again, I'll go through these at the end, put them in order of what I think are best in that category. Go through them, see if I want to change anything. But for now, Angelus is definitely in the slayerific pile. So moving on to season 3 now, and we have 2 villains, and you know I've put them in orders of like I've just sort of put them in the season order, but I am going to stick in this one first. Again, another person who started out pretty good, you know, but she was a little bit of a naughty little girl, lack of better terms anyway. You know, rogue, slayer, that is, of course, Faith. Again, not necessarily a bad guy, but she was, you know, she went down the wrong path very quickly. Absolutely love Faith. Again, you know, next to Spike, I think those 2 characters from the Buffyverse are some of the better characters. Some of the best characters that I love to watch every time they're on screen. When Faith became bad guy, it was like, what they're doing? Why are they doing it? You know, it makes you think about, like, you know, certain circumstances can change people so quickly. And this character is proof of that. So yeah, Faith is going in Sunnydale. There's no doubt that Faith is a very good villain. Especially having, like, you know, the sort of thing, like, when you look at superhero films, especially the early ones in the MCU, you know, with the first Iron Man film, you basically had somebody that's like Iron Man go up against Iron Man, and it's a little bit of the same with Faith and Buffy, Slayer versus Slayer. You know, I just don't think you can get better in storyline, like storytelling. The Flash, if you look at The Flash, the best seasons are when there's a speedster involved as a villain. I don't think it's fair to say that The Flash is weaker without a speedster villain. I still like the show. You know, it gets shit on a lot nowadays, but I still like it personally. So anyway, yeah, so Faith is definitely going in the Sunnydale slot. Next up is another villain, nasty villain from season 3, but I don't think much of him as a villain. He's definitely a villain, don't get me wrong. But that is the Mayor. I think I'm on par with the Master here with this one. I just don't feel like I could put him any higher. I'm not saying he's bored. I'm not bored of it, the character. It's just that I think he's a little bit weaker per se as a villain. He comes across as more of like if they had done a Giles spin-off, that he would be a character in that. Obviously, when you look at the powers and things like that, that's not the case. Like, but yeah, the Mayor definitely deserves to go in a lower tier, just not low enough to the point which I don't like. So yeah, next up we have a villain that, you know, the season 4 there is only technically speaking one villain. However, I have put two in here. This particular villain is a reason why I don't like. There's a reason why I've put these two categories at the bottom, and that is for the initiative. The initiative. I understand in a world with vampires, demons, forces of darkness that you're going to get, a unit or a system where, you have to have something set out and have characters like this. You have, people like this that are trying to deal with it. That aren't Slayers or Angel Investigation at this point right now. I understand that, right? You get Wolfram and Hart, which I think are a good addition. But when the initiative were introduced, I just find it very boring and very lacking in story. I find that season 4 is probably the weakest of the bunch. And that's why I have to put the initiative at the bottom. I just can't stand them. Technically speaking, the initiative are not villains to Buffy. And they're not villains to the universe. However, because they cause what is the next villain on the list, they're in there. So you could technically say that Professor Walsh. Technically speaking, you could say Professor Walsh deserves to be there instead of the initiative. But for me, that's what I'm doing here. There's no Professor Walsh in this. Now, of course, we get to the main villain, the villain of this series. A villain that feels very shooting later on, and that is Adam. And I definitely think that I get really bored of him. He's not as bad as the initiative, because he's interesting. There's certain aspects of him that are interesting, but I do not think that he gets to go in Shallow Like Us. Definitely doesn't get to go into the sort of good, getting to great sort of tier. He's in the bad tier, unfortunately. Bored now is where Adam is going. So next up, and my list has sort of mishmashed because I had to reset it. I've just had to reset everything. Luckily it saved where I put all of them, but not saved the order of the list. So if there are any ones that I put in here that are a bit out of order, I apologise for that. So we are now on to season 5. Season 5, one main villain. Could argue that there are some other villains in there, but I don't think there are any villains that deserve more on this list than anyone else. Glory. Glory is a hell of a villain. She is a whacker of a villain. You get those super villains that are like, how the hell is Buffy going to deal with this? How the hell is Buffy going to get through this? Can Buffy even defeat this? Glory is one of those kind of villains, and Glory deserves to be high on the list. Is she as good as Angelus and Spike and Drusilla? Yes. That is my determination. Again, I will go through these lists, change my ideas there and there. But Glory for me, she just does so much good in the show. Something which, definitely gets deserved to be on the list and definitely deserves to be as high as she is. So, we are moving on now to season 6. We're getting through these pretty quick. But season 6 brought us a hell of a series with some troubles. There's no denying that season 6 has troubles. I just don't think it deserves to get the worst spot that most people put it in. But you could argue that these next 3 villains, who are one villain, the cause of it all, and that is the trio. The trio are trouble throughout the series, to be honest with you. Where do I put them now? The Master and the Mayor, are they better than the trio? Yes. Do I hate them as in the show? No, simply because they do a lot more with them as characters as time goes on. So I don't think they deserve to be on the so terrible side of things. Definitely not. What is going on there? Anyway, sorry. It's definitely not one of those characters where those set of characters that completely ruin the show, like some people think, but I don't think they deserve to be in a good tier at all. They're entertaining, but they get pretty boring. So, they're just warlocks, is what they like to be called. I just don't think they deserve to be any further up. Sticking with season 6, again, another use of where a character goes from good to bad, and then good again, like all 3, 4. No, 3. Yeah, 3. Angel, Spike. No, Angel, Faith, and Willow. So Dark Willow, season 6 villain, very good. I absolutely love the Dark Willow storyline. As a villain, but the storyline itself is good, and I like the fact that they gave Xander something more than just standing around and making stupid quips. I'm not one of the Xander haters. I'm more of a Dawn hater than a Xander hater. I like Xander. Misogynistic, yes. A little bit of a dick, yeah. But, to think Ryan Reynolds was one day, Ryan Reynolds was initially planned to play Xander, which is very weird when you think about it, but it works because of the way Xander sort of comes across. It could very much have been made for Ryan Reynolds. But Dark Willow is going to go next to Faith as a villain. Again, might rearrange that later on. I love Dark Willow. It gave Alison Hannigan a difference in the way that she comes across. She's always come across as like that kind of wimpy little thing. That obviously changes as the series goes on, but I think that giving Alison Hannigan a chance to become a villain, similar to how they did with Amy Acker, there's a lot of things when you're watching Angel that later on in the series they sort of rehash old things that they've done before, and that is definitely the case here. Dark Willow is effectively the the Illyria sort of storyline they did with Angel, so that's a shame. There, a lot of things get copied from show to show. I think it's just a case of Josh Whedon showing that he's getting a little bit behind and lacking in story. Happens quite a few times between shows. But yeah, Dark Willow definitely deserves to be where she is. And next up, and we already see the final season, we've got 4 villains in the final season. 4 villains that I think deserve to be on their own list. So let's start with what I think is probably the weakest in the list of villains for this series, and that is the Bringers. The Bringers are just there, they're lackeys, they're minions, so to speak, of the first evil. So do they deserve to be on the same par as the trio? No. I don't think the trio are better. I don't think the trio are worse than the Bringers. Do I think they're worse than Adam? Yes. I'm going to put the Bringers in the Hellmouth section. It just feels that way. Lackeys, flunky, there's all these words that go around. Bitch. Minions, they are just, they're the droids of the show. You can take one out, you can take 100 out. They're still around, They're just sort of there. That's how it feels with them. Not enjoyable, I don't think. So, next up, we are going to go with the Uber Vamps. The Tarakans. I think it's Tarak-on. It's Tarak-han. That's how it's pronounced, like Tarakan or something like that. It's something like that. The Uber Vamps, as they come across as the layman's sort of terms that they give to certain characters, like, that don't want to keep saying Tarakan like me. They, again, you could say that they're a little bit like the Bringers, but I love them. I think that it gives a little bit, it's important in the storyline. That's something as well. You've got to see them as being, are they important to the main story? Yes, they are. Are they as good as Faith and Dark Willow? No, but they are not in Board Now or Hellmouth. So we are going with Shallow Like Us. It just feels like they're there. They're enjoyable at times, but they're not great, you know? But it is important to the storyline. And that's what I think gets them there. So the next one, Bastard of a Villain. You could say that he's a little bit like Adam in the sense that he was brought in a little bit later on in the season, but he's important to the show, and he's important to Xander's storyline. We are, of course, talking about Caleb. Caleb is a twat. He pokes out Xander's eye. There's a lot of things that this guy does that deserves his bastard sort of promotion in the series. Played by Nathan Fillion, who I absolutely love as an actor. He's a villain on par with Dark Willow and Faith, maybe even slightly more. But I don't think, if there was a tier in between, that's where he would be. And I think it's his own tier, to be honest, when I'm looking at the last villain of the series. But I am putting him in Sunnydale. I do think that he is a good villain. And, again, played by Nathan Fillion, who absolutely acts his bollocks off in this character, as this character. Later on, of course, goes into Firefly, another Joss Whedon property. This guy is fucking brilliant, bad villain, but a good villain at the same time, if you know what I mean. Pardon my French, by the way. And we are at the end. We are on the last villain of the series. And that is, of course, the very first evil. I apologise for the image. The image is not very good. It's the image where Willow is working on the computer, and then it comes out. And it's like, it's that image, but it just looks like a planet with a bit of mist and a bit of light in there. That's all it looks like. But it is the first. It's the first evil. And they are pivotal to the last series. They are absolutely pivotal. They're actually pivotal a bit early on in a smaller story in the show. And then they're later brought back, which I actually quite I enjoy when a show does that. They sort of give you an inkling of how bad this character can be, and later show it down the line. And that's exactly what this character is done to. Of course, we get the whole storyline with Angel when he comes back from hell, and the first evil's trying to get rid of him. You could say quite easily that the powers that be are beyond the first evil, because when you look at that and you go down this whole route of the amulet thing later on, but they are trying to get rid of Angel when they first are introduced. Then, in Angel gets given the amulet, and the powers that be are expecting Angel to use it to tether him to the Wolfram heart. I'm thinking that the original plan for this, obviously they weren't planning it that far ahead, because Angel wasn't a thing when the first appeared in the show, in the universe, But I'm thinking that the plan sort of worked it up, starting with that episode in Buffy with the Angel storyline, and then sort of delving into the Wolfram and Hart sort of stuff, side of things, leading into the Buffy finale, leading into Spike actually being there for the last series of Angel. So it sets up the odd thing here and there, up and up and up until we get to that initial finish. But I think it's really good. And as an overall villain, I think it's very good as well. And I'm thinking Sunnydale. Again, I'm thinking Caleb and the First Evil deserve to have its own little section somewhere in between these two. But I'm not creating a section just for those two. So, do I put them in Slayerific? Or do I put it in Sunnydale? I think because of the importance of the show and the importance of the villain on the show and how much of an impact it has on the last series, it deserves to go where it is right now. So that's the list. Let's dive into it. Who's the worst of these two? Of course, the Initiative are the worst. I hate the Initiative. Sorry, no offense against the character of Riley and Mark Lucas or something like that. No offense against him and his character, but those two, that set of characters just don't interest me, and that's why they're there. The Bringers, yeah. Again, Ballfest. You could say that I could put them in the board now section, but I don't think it's deserving of the board section. To be honest with you, I'm gonna leave Adam in the. No, I'm not. I'm gonna swap these over. Adam's worse than the trio. I think people might disagree with that. There, might think I should put the trio in the Hellmouth section, but for me, no. Shall I like us? What do I think of that order? I think the Uber Vampires are more interesting than the Master and the Mayor. I know there's not a lot brought to the Uber Vamps, the Turricons, and the Turricons, but I do think that they're just a little bit more interesting than these two characters. The Master gets introduced in an episode of Angel as well, being the sire of Darla. But I just don't think. Actually, I'm questioning myself now. I'm going to stick it there. I'm going to keep it as it is. I think I'm happy with that, actually. The Mayor, again, is enjoyable. Just these two characters, I think, beat him overall. With this lot, Dark Willow over Faith. But Faith over Caleb. I think that's the way I'm going to stick with that one. And top tier. This is tough. I'm going to put Angelus as the top villain of the series. No, I'm not. I'm going to put Glory as the top villain of the series. Go there. Wait. Behave. Okay, let's move you instead. Oh, there we go. And I'm going to put the first, above Drew and Spike, as villains. I think that Glory is the best villain of the series. And again, with these videos, it's just my opinion. It's just this guy's opinion. I've done it though. It's that way. But it's just my opinion. You don't have to hate me. I don't want to hear it in the comments because it's not the way that YouTube should work. At the end of the day, it's just my opinion. It's just what I think. I love Buffy. I'm currently rewatching Angel at the minute, so I can do a tier list for the Angel villains. It's going to be a lot more difficult. There's going to be a lot of random villains for Angel, because they had a bit more of a sporadic sort of feel, whereas Buffy sort of felt a little bit more contained. Like you could argue that the first series of Angel, their villains was Wolfram and Hart. But anyway, that's the list. So that is it for today. I hope you enjoyed this. I absolutely love doing this. I loved getting into some new stuff on my laptop as well. This is a little different. Something that I'm hoping to carry on as well. I do think that, doing some reaction videos as well, hopefully. But I'm just trying to figure out exactly how I can get around the copyright thing. Need to figure that out. But anyway, that is the video for today. I hope you have enjoyed it. Thank you for watching. I've been Scribble. This has been Scribble Sphere, and I'll see you next time, folks.